Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Unit Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial to show how to use my giant sandcastle backdrops in Photoshop. I already have my images open that I want to use, and I use my quick selection tool to select my subject. And I can see already that there's a couple spots that weren't selected. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly select parts that the select subject button did not. And then I'm going to edit, copy, and edit and paste into my image. I pulled from an actually web size file, so my subject is pretty small. But using my tools here, I'll make sure this is selected up here because I want to keep my proportions of my subject. And then I'm going to position her, and now these are giant sandcastles on purpose, so my subject is going to be smaller than the sandcastle. Okay, go ahead and click OK. I could play around with where I wanted to place her on the backdrop. I think there looks okay. And now, first thing I noticed, she doesn't match my backdrop really at all. Colors, saturation, contrast, really anything. The first thing I'm going to do is create a brightness and contrast layer above my subject. I'm going to click this button right here, or you could right click the layer and select create clipping mask. I'm going to up my contrast, and already that looks a lot better. I'm also going to click back on my subject so I don't have to keep creating a clipping mask, because if I do a new layer in between now, it's going to automatically do that. I'm going to go up to color balance, and I'm going to slide it a little to my yellow and a little to my red, so her tone matches the backdrop. And then I'm going to go ahead and select all three of these layers and merge them. I'm going to create a clipping mask on my subject. I'm going to take my black brush at about 15% opacity. She has some sheer fabric on her dress, so I'm going to go ahead and paint that off just a little bit in the areas that the backdrop would kind of show through that fabric. Just do it little by little. I don't want to take too much off of it, but I want to take out enough so that the background is showing through the dress. I'm going to zoom in. Again, I use like a web size file. This is an old maternity photo that I'm using, so obviously my subject doesn't look too sharp in this one, but for tutorial purposes that's okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to use my black brush at 100% opacity, make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to clean up those edges, which my edges are a little bit worse, again, because of the web-sized file. The hair, usually I don't really have to touch the hair very much. You can fast forward through this part if you would like. My photo was obviously taken on, my original photo was taken on the beach. It's going to be a lot easier to blend if that's your case, but if not, I'm just going to get rid of that hair right there. If not, it's possible to edit them in from another picture. But it is always easier to shoot for the digital backdrop that you're trying to use. White brush if you need to paint back on. Took a chunk out of her bum there. I didn't want to do that. I'm just going to get rid of that little piece right there. I'm not going to mess with the part in the sky too much because that line's not as noticeable. I'll probably use these backdrops for a photo of my daughter too from the beach. These will be really cute backdrops for mermaid photos. I know those are pretty popular right now with The Little Mermaid coming out. But I have a plethora of maternity photos on my hard drive because that's something I specialize in, so it's easier for me to just use a maternity photo. Oops. Okay. Almost. Like I said, with my file, like you shouldn't have to clean up the edges this much. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So she was already in sand, so I'm just gonna kind of go ahead and erase. Like it's not gonna look too unrealistic with her feet not completely showing because they would be in the sand realistically. If you pulled an image that wasn't originally in the sand, I would probably mask off some of the feet to make it look a little bit more realistic. Jeez, these highlights are like really blown out on her hands from using a small file. But took a little bit too much off of her belly there. All right, zoom out. Now I'm going to add some shadow. So the light is coming from kind of back here, but also from this side. So it is matching her, but I'm going to go ahead and click on her and I'm going to grab my dodge tool on highlights and I'm going to lower that exposure way down to 20 some. And I'm just going to make those highlights a little bit more. Okay. Create a, actually I want to add some more to this part of her dress. Okay. Created a layer above my background, multiply blending mode. I'm going to keep it at 100% opacity for now, and I'm going to select a darker part of the sand. And I'm going to erase some of this, but just to get that in there, I'm going to lower the opacity. And then I'm going to create a layer mask on there. Grab my brush, black brush, at about 30% opacity, and then I'm going to brush off. There would be shadow, but not much behind her. Okay, create another layer, multiply blending mode. And I'm just going to use a much smaller brush. I'll keep it at 30%, and I'm just going to do a little bit of shadowing under her here. Zoom out, change the opacity. Okay. That part of her back. I'm going to go to my layer mask again and paint off. I think I left too much there. Here we go. Oops. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to click on her again. I'm going to grab my burn tool on shadows, and I'm just going to paint in a little bit more shadow on her back there. Okay. Now there's a little bit of water on here, so I'm actually gonna, oops. I'm going to create a new layer above her and merge those two layers. And then I'm going to duplicate her. I am going to go to my move tool, select, and I'm going to right click inside there and flip vertical. And then I'm going to drag and I'm going to change it to overlay and bring my opacity way down. Only because there should be a little bit of a reflection right there because of the water. You might not even have to do that. Oops. I have no idea what I just did. Okay, apparently I hit my magnifier. Sorry, guys. Okay. I'm going to duplicate my background layer. And since she's standing away from the sandcastle, you need to add depth. So I'm going to add blur. So I'm going to go up to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And I think that looks okay. I'm going to add about 5. Create a layer mask. Grab my black brush at 100% opacity. And I'm going to brush it off the sand where she's standing for that field. Okay, and then once I do that, I can see there's some of this dress that I want to erase. I'm going to go ahead and merge those two copies, create my layer mask, and I'm going to erase this gap in the dress. There we go. Okay, now there's a couple parts of her that still I want to add, like her feet are very like cool in this picture. So I'm going to add another layer. Color balance, create that clipping mask. Oop. Sorry, I don't need to add a new layer. Create that clipping mask on the color balance layer. And slide to my yellow and my red. And then I'm going to click on that layer mask and I'm going to click Control or Command on your keyboard plus I. And that is basically you're not going to see anything yet. And I'm going to paint that on with my white brush at 100% opacity on the parts of her back here, right here, her hands, and her feet. And that just made it so it matches the photo. But I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to add it to her. Yeah, I'm going to add it to her dress over here too, because that golden light coming through is paint on and paint off. Gonna make those parts of her be a lot cooler. Or warmer, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to click on her. And I like to sometimes go around. My edges aren't blending very well. I'm going to grab my blur tool and just blur the very edge of my subject so the blur and the depth falls off of them more nicely. If there, oh, see, there's some parts that I didn't really brush off right there, but I can just blur them. I'm gonna zoom out, do this a little bit faster. I don't typically blur the hair, but mine looks like awful because it was a small file, so I'm gonna blur the edges. Okay. And that's pretty. I'd be happy with that. Might even make her grab my a levels layer, and add just a little bit of shadow. There we go, that's way better. Okay, and now I'm going to merge her and my shadows. I'll merge those too. Oh, just kidding. Do it this way for before and after. Before, after. If you have any questions, you can message me on Etsy. If you are a studio photographer, you can join my group on Facebook. I will link that in the description.